I've got a starter kit. So if anyone's interested, I'll have this QR. I'll send it out to the meetup as well. So I've got a little starter kit that takes you through things like triage and discovery, email flows, things like that. And so that's a good starting place. But yeah, so let's think about, you're starting off your client journey, you've got a new project. You're a freelancer, you're starting off this project, you maybe got a small job in, you're wondering, how do you start this? How do you do it properly? And I love this quote. I don't know who it comes from, but it came up on one of the searches. It says, freelance isn't hard because of the work, it's hard because of the clients. So this is going to be client focused. So how can you prepare yourself? How can you prepare your projects? How can you tame that client so they're not on your back all the time? So you're giving them the best experience, but you're not letting them control the whole process as well. Because certainly when I started out freelancing, you kind of want to please the client, but you feel as if sometimes they run the show a little bit. There was a good site called The Oatmeal, and they've got this little comic strip where it starts off with this client comes in and they show this designer the old website, and it's like website 2.0, and it's got a lens flare, and it's got bright colors, and you have these 3D buttons. And the client's going, oh, this is disaster. And the graphic designer's going, I know, it's just rubbish. Who designed this? And it takes you through this little step where the guy does this brilliant new design, and the client's like, this is fantastic. And then it says, I want to bring in my grandma to review this because she did a flyer in the 1990s for the local bake fair. So then you get the grandma starts to give feedback on this website and said, oh, it needs to be more pink. It needs to have cats. Everyone loves cats, you know? And then the guy gets involved, the client gets involved and says, actually, the greatest thing to me is my dog. So I want to have a dog consciousness as part of it. It goes downhill from there. So it's entitled Client from Hell. It's a great little comic strip. I'll send a link on the meetup page, but it's so funny. But it's so true, because you start with the best intentions, and then if you let the client grab you, you're no more than a puppet as they take you along that journey. So hopefully these things will help you still give benefit to the client, but retain control in your projects. So getting on track. What you want to do when you start off a project is put some things in place that allow you to give the best experience possible, but allows you to keep control of the project process. So there's 4 big things that you want to start to do. The first thing, at the very beginning, whenever you get a lead coming, whenever somebody calls you or sends an email, you want to set up some sort of triage system. You don't even need to speak to them. It could be a form. So you might get an email to say, I got this project, blah, 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 blah. And you could just say, oh, well, you know, all my projects go through this. If you fill out this form, that'd be fantastic. You can ask them questions on the form. But triage is all about figuring out if this is the right fit for you, if the client's got money and budget, and you know, if they've thought about the project and they're willing to actually pay that money. So triage is very important. I never used to do this. I got burned a few times, so this is definitely something I always do now in this project. Scoping. Scoping needs to be done at the very beginning. I'm guessing a lot of people miss this step as well, but it's really important to look at what the client is asking you to do, scope it out and see, is that in your capability? What does it involve? How many hours? You know, can you do it? Do you need extra stuff? So you need to be very, very clear on scoping as to what's included in the project and what's not included. You want to put in some systems in place, things like triage and project management, but put in systems so that when you're going through the process of project management, you're guiding this client through this process. The more systems you have in place, the less surprises you're going to get at the end, in case you're just kind of finger in the air, winging it. You don't want to do that. The proposal, most of the client projects is based on proposals, so you need to have a banging proposal. That needs to include lots of things in there to make sure, like legal stuff. You want to put your scoping in there. You want to put the cost of the project, your terms and conditions, lots of things, what the client will do, what you'll do, what the delivery is. Having a really banging proposal is really important to keep projects on track, because that's what the client's going to go off. If something goes wrong, that's what you're going to reverse back on to say, well, this is what we agreed upon. So having these things as a minimum in place is going to help keep your web projects on track. So let's have a look at triage. So the basic thing of triage is we want to make sure that the client is the best fit for us. Now, it might be a good fit for somebody else. Maybe a client would be a good fit for you in 10 years' time. So there's no one story fits all here. It's really about you and your capabilities, what you're looking for, what price point you're handling, what kind of projects you want to take on. Are you just like a theme developer that wants to spin up a new theme and pass it on? Versus the client's looking for a more bespoke development side. So this really is up to you. You have to set up your own triage, what you can handle, what kind of clients you want, what price point you're willing to take them on as. You want to ask lots of questions. In the client kit download, there's about 4 pages of questions, and they're the ones that I use. There's a basic triage that you go through that you can ask the people, things like, what's your budget range? How many people are going to sign off this? How critical is this for you? Those kind of things. And if people give you a, I don't know, or we've got a board of 10 directors, or, we've only got a budget of 3,000 or 4,000, you've got to fit that in with yourself and to see, where does the red flags appear? If your minimum is 10,000 and they've only got 5,000 to spend, then, that's kind of a red flag. So you might want to say, well, thanks, but, I'm going to refer you to one of these other people that who can take project levels within that. There's lots of gotchas with this, but you basically don't want to waste your time on people that you're not going to service. So it's good to have a triage call, get them out of the way, or qualify them as somebody you're interested in working with. So there's basic ones like budget, number of people, how length of the project, when do you want it delivered. If you get the feeling that this is going to be a good client, or it's going to be a high ticket client that's within your range, I've got a list of additional questions in triage that you can then prompt them towards. And that further qualifies them to see how serious they are, what their expectations are, things like that. So if you're looking for red flags, quick red flags, they say, okay, I can't work with that person. And it's starting to feel good, then there's a further, if you want to, further triage that you can then take them down that level to further qualify them for that. I got caught out with this very early on. I had an accountant, and we met up in Parramatta, and he's seen some of the stuff that I did. It was really good. His website was really, really basic. It really did need updated. I knew how much he charged per client. He was like $600-700 an hour type accountant. And we talked about the project and what he wanted, and it was fantastic. And we finally circled around to budget. So how much you got to spend this? $1,000. And I'm like, oh, I start at a minimum of 5,000. This was back years ago. He's like, oh no, that's too expensive. So if I'd have went through triage initially, that saved all that kind of go out to Parramatta and an hour's chatting over coffee just to find out he didn't have the money or wasn't willing to spend that money on that. And we actually had a conversation about, all you need is 5 clients you've already paid, for the website. But, I was early days and didn't understand that stuff. So triage, really critical to do. Scoping. So once you went with the triage, once you got the project, they've decided to go with you. The next big thing is you need to scope out what they're giving you. So usually you'll find that they'll give you a little bit of a brief. If they don't have a brief, then you want to, take that to more like a paid discovery session for that, or paid strategy session. But you want to have a look at what they're offering you. What is their brief? What do they want? I need to scope that out properly. So you need to define what's in and out. What I tend to do, have I done discovery in this? No, I haven't. So what I used to do before I got serious in projects, I used to just have a look at what they wanted and then figure out, where does that lie with WordPress, technical stuff. So that was my early days in doing that. What I do now is I do my triage call. If they're qualified, I ask them to do a paid strategy session. So the outcome of the paid strategy session would be either a 6-month or 12-month digital roadmap that would include the website, but also include things like marketing, content publishing, things like that. So that's where I am just now. But if you're not up to that, I know a lot of people find a bit scared about doing paid strategy sessions, then you still need to do early scoping. Like figure out exactly what they want, what are the must-haves, what are the nice things, maybe separate that out. And it's your job to be very, very clear on the scope as to what they're getting, what's in scope, what's out scope, and the scope's going to determine, how much value you're going to be able to present that project within their budget. Like that. So scope creep usually happens because you're kind of too fuzzy in your scoping. If you leave things too fuzzy, then there's the possibility that they're going to say, well, I wasn't quite clear on that, but I want this instead. So you need to be really, really tight with your scope, have that signed off by the client as well before you start the project.
Sorry, but do you mind mentioning any apps or kind of tools that you use as you're going along?
As I'm going along.
And well, when you're going along, you're like, is there a particular app you use for scoping, or is it just a document, or to share stuff with clients? Is it just Google Docs? There's no apps for everything, so. Yeah,
so I've got an initial, go back to triage, I've got a Gravity form on my website that's a triage call. Yeah. So people will fill out 3 or 4 things. If I get it by email, I get it by call, or anything else, I always redirect them to the website. So that's the first thing that goes through officially. So that's a very quick triage. If they're past that, I think it's about 4 or 5 questions. It's Gravity form. If they're past that, then I'll give them a call and I'll do a larger triage on them. Actually get to chat with them, see what they're like. So that's a call. It could be Zoom, but I tend to prefer on the phone for that initial triage. Then if that gets qualified, we go on to paid discovery. That's Zoom. Okay, so it'll be a Zoom session, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Maybe if it's a paid one, a couple hours or a half day, but no more than a half day for that. So that's all on Zoom. I use Google Docs. I've got a template. I've got a discovery template for myself. I've got a client worksheet as well. So I send them out a pre-strategy session list with a whole list of questions. That could be things like how much traffic your website's getting, what's your lifetime value of a customer, all that sort of stuff that we ask them during the discovery call. But sometimes business might not understand that. So I have like a pre-session template that they go. And then the strategy session itself is a workbook. So I've got a client workbook for them, and I've got a master workbook for myself. And I will work through all the questions I need to ask them during the strategy call. And then that's over Zoom. After that, I'll use ChatGPT. It generates a summary of the whole session. So I've got that summary. I'll send that summary to the client. I'll take the bits out of that and what I remember, and I put that down into my worksheet. And then we work at a 6 or 12 month goal for them. And that's what they get delivered as part of the strategy session. So they get this 6 or 12 month roadmap as to what they want to do, website included, marketing, all that sort of good stuff, along with a proposal from myself to do the work. So that's the delivery from them. And that's all Google Docs and stuff. So I've not got any templates, not any apps at this point. Yeah, they get added to CRM. Yeah. I use Fluent CRM for that one. If you have got scope creep, if it does happen, and it does happen sometimes, here's how you approach that. So we don't just say no. I was partner director of a company, and we had a client, and he was paying us a reasonable amount of money that time. But then he wanted additional stuff put on that. That was scope creep. It was out the scope. My partner said, no, no, you're not getting that. You need to pay us more. And I'm more of the, well, can we chat about that type thing? Don't just say no. So there's a way of approaching it if you want to maintain that rapport, that communication with the people. So you want to say to them, great idea. Let's have a look at how that fits in with scope. So don't say no. There's ways of approaching this. So what I tend to do if people are asking for something additional when you're within the project is say, let's go back to the scope. Let's go back to the proposal agreement. And then, where does it fit in? Does it fit in? Is it a small thing? Is it just like a couple of pages? Fine, I'll just throw that in. Is it a big feature? Is it like taking us on a different divergence? Then there's a way of approaching this. The biggest one you ask is why now? What's changed? Okay. Now you're wanting this thing that we hadn't identified when we spent half a day together. Why is that urgent now? Where's that coming from? What changed? You need to understand why the customer is thinking that way. And then, of course, there's different ways to approach that. So you can swap out features to say, oh, well, if this is really important, if you want to stick with the same time and budget, we can swap something else out, and push that, if that's important to them. Push it to phase 2 if it's not so important. Say, okay, we understand that that's now something you want in, but it's not within this phase. Let's push it out to phase 2. Is that okay? Yes or no? Or we just say, well, if you want to incorporate it, then we're going to have to adjust the cost and time. It's extra stuff, which is going to push out the cost. It's going to push out the project, and here's why. So there's ways of approaching that rather than just saying no or just saying yes and bringing it in. So it's a good conversation to have, but you need to be very quick on scope creep. If you let it simmer, then a client can assume you're doing it, or you've said no, but you're not communicating that to the client. So you need to be very, very clear, jump on scope creep when that happens. Okay, so you've done your session, you've done your discovery call, you've done your scoping, whatever it is. Now it's time to craft a proposal. The great thing of doing a strategy session, some people call it a discovery call, is that you get to ask the customer all these questions about the project, things like how much money do they have, what's your time frame, who else is the key players in this, what's the most urgent problem, what would it look like if it got fixed today, all that sort of stuff. And they'll tell you all their problems. Oh, this is terrible, this is terrible. It'd be great if this happened. They're basically telling you what they want, which is great. This is why these discovery strategy sessions work. So you take all that and you basically craft the best proposal for them because you're hitting all their pain points and you're answering them. So that's the best process to go through rather than just try and decide, to write a proposal or a standard proposal. You want to use that information you've got from the client. A lot of people just generally choose proposals as a quote. So I'll just give them a number. I'm trying to think of them as more of a strategic document rather than just like a number based. You want to include some fundamentals in your proposal. You want to recap what problem they're having. So get the biggest 3 or 4 problems. And that's what you want to address and tell them how you're going to do that and how it's going to benefit them. So my proposals are very benefit led. So they're not just, it's going to cost you 10,000 or 20,000. It's saying we're going to solve this problem and choose this value. And then the investment is at the end. Definitely you need to outline your plan and timetable, and that needs to align with whatever the client says reasonably. Sometimes you'll find that clients have an expectation of tomorrow, whereas these things take time. So it could be 4, 6, 8 weeks. You need to be able to communicate and show them how that is. And then you want to show the cost. I don't use the word cost, I use the word investment now. But you want to do that after you've framed the value of what you're delivering. So don't have a cost page and then all the stuff. Clearly outline what you're doing, how it's going to value, how it's going to benefit the client, and then give them their investment for that project. I say keep it simple. 2 to 4 pages are good when you're starting out. Mine are like 20. It's a 20 page, but there's a reason why it's 20 page. I've got a proposal template. The link is in the client kit, and I'll send a link out to the meetup. This is a cost-based proposal doc. I tend not to do these anymore. I tend to do value-based proposals where I'll understand what the customer needs and then I'll present a value for that. So it could be 20,000, it could be 40,000, it could be 60,000, but it's dependent on what benefits I'm going to give to the client. So it's not based on, this one is based on how much time it's going to take me. The value-based ones is how much benefit I'm going to give to the client. That's where you get the bigger, higher stakes. If a lifetime value of a client is 20,000, and I'm going to get them 4 or 5 new clients a month, then charging 60,000, 80,000 for the project is a no-brainer because it's going to make that back in a few months. So that's value-based. But this one's cost, which is where most people start off with. It's how much time it's going to take you, and you've got like, I don't know, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. So you times that by how long it's going to take, and that's where you get. So this is a cost-based proposal. My one's actually 20 pages, but you can trim it down for your needs. There's the index for there. So you can see at the very beginning, do a snapshot. That's the kind of problem that they're at and where they want to go. So business needs, business metrics, how many visitors they've got, target audience as well. That includes stuff like lifetime value. Then I've got the scope, what's in scope and what's out of scope. I've got project workflows. Here's how we're going to do the things, wireframes, graphic design, content, all that sort of good stuff. Data protection and sensitivity as well. I've got that in, so you need to understand what sensitive data is being, how critical it is, and put things in place for that. all the way. So that's the project workflow. Deliverables as well. What are you actually going to deliver? Is it going to be a zip file? Are you going to put it onto a staging server or produce it live for them? Then you got all the additional stuff, all the good things like where's storage going to be for videos, SEO, are you going to provide that? Google Analytics, GE4, what commercial plugins are you going to have so that, how much money they're going to spend monthly, terms and conditions, all that sort of stuff for there. You can condense all that if you want to, but I've just got a big one for this. From page 11, I've got the project investment breakdown. So you'll see it's a lot in cost-based stuff, not so much in value-based, but cost-based. It's itemized for this so the client can see exactly what they're paying for. So discovery session, strategy session, web design, website development, staging server, I break it down, all that. So this is a very way that a lot of beginner freelancers can understand, because it's a time that you go through. So if I spend 3 hours setting up project rollout, for example, then 3 hours times whatever. So people can understand that. These cost-based proposals, they're not scalable though. So if you had a big high-ticket customer and you've got a big website project and it's going to take you 6 months, for example, you can't times 6 months times however many hours in 6 months times whatever your hourly rate is. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the millions. So, when it comes to bigger projects, you kind of tend to have to move over to value-based pricing rather than cost-based. But it works for smaller projects, maybe under 5,000 for these ones. Some customers like that, itemized. A lot of customers like that because they can see exactly what they're getting for time. So it works up to a point. So building systems, this is what you want to do if you want to scale your business. You want to have systems in place like the discovery call or the triage, so that when you approach your clients love this. They love being told this is how the system works. You do triage, you do this strategy session, you do project management, this process. They just love that. It gives a bit of confidence as well to go with you, because again, still a lot of freelancers, they don't have these things in place. It's very much just, it'll cost you 5,000 and then let's get started. So having a systems in place that you can then show the client and onboard them through, it gives them a lot of confidence. So six minimum systems that I use when I bring people on board is the triage call we've talked about, the paid strategy session, which still a lot of people don't do. They still do that for free. 12 or 6 month digital roadmap. So that's the deliverable from the paid strategy session, along with the proposal to deliver what's in the digital roadmap. Sign contract with deposit. I talk to a lot of freelancers. I talked to some at work at Brisbane. They still don't take deposit. A lot of them don't take deposit for client work. They just get started, and then 6 months later, they try and haggle from the money. Give me some money. But get this contract signed, get a deposit, minus 50% initially, 25% on when I finish my stuff, and then 25% when I hand over the deliverable. And then onboarding as well. So onboarding can be all the systems that you use. I use ClickUp. You asked me about systems. So I use ClickUp from all my stuff now. So I onboard my client into ClickUp. There'll be an onboarding email sequence that goes out to them that shows them all the systems that happen. It'll enter to ClickUp. It'll add them in there. There'll be different task lists for them to do in the project. I've got a standard project setup that I just copy over. So it's like a to-do list, and then it's content gathering, it's media gathering, all that sort of stuff that you ask them anyway. It's all just as tasks in ClickUp now. And then you jump into the project. So 6 things leading up to, and then that's you jumped into the project. So these are systems that work. They work for me, and they work really, really well. I didn't have these initially, and it was just chaos. But now I've put these in place. Onboarding clients is like smooth sailing now. Some tools, you asked about tools. ClickUp, I used to use Trello. Trello still, it's okay. It's okay for beginners. But ClickUp's much more advanced with API and ChatGPT integration and permissions and stuff. I get a lot of that. Some of my friends have went with Notion, which is probably more advanced. I quite like ClickUp for that. Google Docs, I use Google Docs and spreadsheets for everything. Stripe and Gravity Forms for payments and intakes. I used to use WooCommerce, but I got caught with card fraud with that, the card testing, because I had low ticket items, so I just got rid of that. I went back to Stripe with the gravity form, which works every single time, which is great.
Do you get them to pay for the plugins directly? Or
Yes. Yeah.
You just arrange for them to?
Yep.
And then you never have to get involved in the renewals?
No. Never take client card details, or never pay for something and then say to them, oh, it'll transfer you over within 6 months or 12 months, because that just ends with an awkward conversation. Up front, they pay for all licenses. It's in the proposal. They pay for hosting. So
in their email.
Yep.
Under their accounts.
Yep. So they pay for everything up front, or they pay for all the licenses for that. You don't want to be transferring stuff, or your card expires. It's nasty. Get them all to pay for that up front. Yep. So this is what's in the client control starter kit. Client triage, questions. I've got discovery session guide. I don't know where this word discovery should be strategy. Proposal doc, a link to my proposal doc, onboarding checklists, sample project timelines. There's a couple of emails for onboarding as well. Yep, so that's it. Recap, so qualify hard. I know a lot of freelancers still don't do that, but you need to qualify the leads that are coming in. Scope very tightly. Make sure that you cover as much stuff as you can. ChatGPT is actually very good at understanding that. I had a client who has given me PowerPoint. They've done the whole website design in PowerPoint with some other people from the company. They've also got it shared with commenting in. So I had to take that out. I put it into like a scope document, so it's clarified for exactly what's in, what's out of scope. Be very strategic in your proposals. But if you're running a paid strategy, then they're pretty much answering all those questions anyway. Put lots of systems in place, and yeah, say no to scope creep. So really, you want to take scope creep away by being very, very precise in your scoping and your proposal for that. If you put this in place, then you're going to see that your client's not in control. They're not going to be running away with you, that you're going to be able to control these projects and put them in place. That's a QR code for the starter kit. And I'll send a link to that later on in the meetup.
What about maintenance?
Maintenance, yeah.
Yeah,
so that would be part of the proposal. So during the paid strategy, part of that is talking about, well, once it's delivered, what's going to happen afterwards. Because I usually do a 12-month strategy. So maybe it might take 2 months to do development and then up to a point where you're delivering the website. But then what happens with months, 2 to 10 or 3 to 10, 3 to 12. So that'll be, content management, content strategy. It'll be looking at traffic. It'll be looking at conversions, landing pages. All that sort of stuff will be in the strategy guide, including maintenance as well, which will be an option that they can sign up for. I tend to mention maintenance early on, so in part of that paid strategy, we talk about, who's going to look after the website, what it involves. I've got a spin-off company called WP Wingman, which looks after WordPress websites. I've got a document called the WOSG, Website Owner's Survival Guide. So I use that as part of the onboarding when I bring on a new client. So once we've done the paid strategy, I've done the proposal, I add them to a couple of email sequences. And one of them, I send them out this Website Owner's Survival Guide. And it's a document that shows exactly what you need to do to update and keep a WordPress site up to date. So it talks about plugins, it talks about white screen or death, it talks about weekly things you do, monthly things you do, 6 monthly things you do, yearly things. It basically, it's a marketing tool to show them what it means to update and keep a WordPress website up to date, which helps then think, oh, well, I won't be able to do all that. Okay, well, we'll enter into a paid WordPress maintenance fee. So it's another little push to reinforce this maintenance afterwards. Yeah, so you got any questions? I can take, yeah.
When did you show that that presentation or those slides with the maintenance? You said that's in the sales process?
Yeah. So once we're done, triage is obviously qualifying. And then I highly recommend that we do a paid strategy session, whether that's a 12-month digital map or it's just to talk about what the project is about. So I can then give them a roadmap of where to go. It's at that stage when we're talking about, we're going through what they want, what the features, what the benefits, who their stakeholders, but then what happens after we deliver? Who's going to look after that website? Are you going to go for WP Engine or Kinetics with a managed server? They look after that, that's fine. But it gets them starting about thinking what they need to do, what's involved, how much it costs, you know, not just in money, but it's in time. If they want to manage it themselves, that's why I give them this WAS guide. So it shows them exactly what it means to look after a WordPress website. I mean, you guys know that. It takes a lot. If they're going to, a lot of people have aspirations of looking after themselves. You know, it's a WordPress website. Oh, yeah, I can just click everything and press update all, and it works. Well, it does for small sites, but not for things with like membership sites or WooCommerce sites, which is the type of project you're looking at when you get to these high value that you want to do these strategy sessions with. Yeah.
Does your maintenance include the number of hours per month that they get for queries, or how do you deal with ad hoc disasters?
Well,
you know, something happens to their website. And,
yeah.
They're going bananas because you're.
Yeah. So again, I handle that through my WP Wingman site, and there's a contract that they sign, and in that contract it has things like when I respond, when the business monitoring is, what happens through different levels of crisis, when I'll be able to respond, what I'm able to do. So within that whole scope, I mean, I'm just me, so I can't be there 24 hours a day. So there's business hours that I operate in, there's monitors that I have. So example, if I will get the client's text address, phone address, and I've got an uptime monitor that will send a text message out to various people, including myself, but the client, so at least they're getting notified. So in my contract, they'll say that my business hours are yada, yada. Outside business hours, you might receive an email or a text message saying your website will be down, but you know, it won't be fixed or adhered to until 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. the next morning. So I've got things like that in place, because if you don't have that in place in your contract, then you're in breach of contract. Yeah, I've got different levels. I've got 3 different levels of support. So small ones all the way up to big enterprise ones where I'm looking after the WooCommerce, I'm looking after membership sites. Got different things within that package. They've got X amount of small jobs that they can have, or they can use that as consultancy time. So I've got a lot of people who, rather than, you know, say, oh, I want some extra content or I want to do landing pages, they might just want to give me a call and say, look, I'm looking to implement this thing. How's that going to fit in with the website? So they have chats. It's consultancy or small jobs. I've also moved into what I call ad hoc hours. So I've got a couple of clients that's working well for them. They buy a number of support hours from me, and then it doesn't expire. It gets billed to the second, because I use ClickUp and Clockify. So I just click the button, it tells you how long I click stop, and that works for them. And it's all automated. Whenever I do that, it adds it to a Google Sheet, and that Google Sheet totals, so they can see exactly what's left and what's done. But I might not hear from a client for a couple of months, and then they might come along with 2 or 3 hours of stuff. Again, there's a contract in place that says, you know, that stuff balanced with my other project work. So you can't expect, you know, a response within an hour or a fix within an hour. It's flexible within what I've got. If you want more flexibility or urgent stuff, then I've got retainer hours. So I've got 5 or 10 retainer hours that is more of a same day business response. So I've got different levels depending on different clients. But the ad hoc one's working quite well for a couple of clients who just want, you know, sometimes they want some stuff, but they don't want me on retainer all the time. Any other questions?
A lot of your people are, nobody comes to you looking for a new website, or they haven't had a website. So I guess a new company or needed a website. Most people have.
I've had a couple of business starters
Yeah.
come to me. So they might have a small thing out there, but they want to then, they've got the grant, they've got the funding, now they want to do the proper website on there. So it's a mix. I mostly get government websites because I'm on a vendor list. It's actually in Queensland. It's a long story, but I'm on the vendor list for Queensland government. So I get some jobs through there as well. But that most of them are tender processes, which are a bit of a pain because you have to do a lot of stuff up front. But yeah, and that's usually redesign. It's usually the website's not been touched for 5 years, or there's a new government policy that's been enacted that they need to change something or spin off a new website or something like that. So. Okay, all good?
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming along.
Oh,